Well, good morning to a new adventure for our Business and Leaders Luncheon. Thank you all for making the change and for coming here. So we're going to be doing things a little bit differently for the next couple of months. Everybody is responsible to clean your plate, take it home, and bring it back next week. Obviously, that's not the case. So I just want to welcome you to the Business and Leaders Luncheon. I'm Lynn Snodgrass, the CEO of the absolute most fun and successful chamber in the Pacific Northwest. And if you don't believe me, ask any of the board members. They will tell you the same thing. I want to thank our presenting sponsors. You saw them on the new loop that Aaron has put together. You saw our sponsors, but you also saw some of the upcoming events that the Chamber is responsible for. Our presenting sponsors are Aero Sanitary Service, Columbia Bank / Umpqua. Not sure when I need to start saying Umpqua only. The Boeing Company, Portland General Electric, and Persimmon Country Club. And I want to thank our stakeholder sponsor. Jordan and James are at this table today. Our stakeholder sponsors are Gresham School District and MetroEast Community Media. Keith, thank you for that. And thank you for the podium. Thank you for my Apple box. Thank you for this speaker, this microphone that keeps going up and down. But one of the things they do also is they do community events. And several weeks ago, maybe it was a month or so ago, they did an interview with Mayor Stovall, City Manager Vetter, Police Chief Goldberg, and Fire Chief Lewis. And they did a 20-minute kind of interview about all those people about the safety program. So there's a QR code that we're going to pass around so you can take a look at that and link up and see some of their perspective that you might not hear today. So thanks for doing that, Keith, and for sharing it with us. And also, the information that you hear today will be rebroadcasted. So on the way out, registration desk, you can pick up one of these, and it gives you the broadcast times. So you can take it back to your staff, to your family members, to your neighbors, and say, you know, I didn't know this, but now you can be certified smart, too, by going on and watching the rebroadcast. So thank you, MetroEast Community Media. Did I say Web Academy? I always have to correct myself because there's two names. I would like to acknowledge some board members today. And I'm going to take a little bit of a detour here, and I want to introduce Thea, who Shop Girl Consignment owner. She's a board member of the Historic Downtown Business Association. So Thea, thanks for being here today. I know many of you are on other boards, as you should be, giving back, but a business association is a lot of hard work as well. So Thea, thank you for doing that. But I do need to acknowledge my bosses, and I say that plural. President Brian York is here with us today, board president, and we're not going to do an applause meter today. So if somebody else gets more or less than Brian, we're not counting that. Okay. Past President Leslie Parker is with us. Thank you very much. Sitting next to her is Dr. Scari with Mountain Community College. She's on the board. Thank you very much. Alex Marcus is with us. She's one of our new board members, and she's at that table right there. She brought 3 friends with her today, so she gets the higher marks of board member. And our treasurer, who counts every dime and makes sure that every penny is spent correctly, the treasurer of our board is Jordan from Gresham School District. Jordan's over there. We have elected officials with us today. You're going to hear from Mayor Stovall in a couple of moments, but we have also or you could hear from him right now. We have Council President Sue Piazza with us today. Thank you, Sue, for being here. You can bring your own cheering section. And Councilor Janine Gladfelter is with us, too. Where did Janine go? There she is, Janine. Here we go. And I think Councilor Hinton has signed up to be today, but I haven't seen him show up today. So if he comes, we can applaud him. You know, thanks for being late and coming. So we can do that. So the Chamber mission statement is to be the catalyst to advocate, educate, and collaborate on behalf of the membership for the vitality and the prosperity for the entire region, not just for the members, but for the entire region. And one of the ways that the Chamber is able to accomplish all 3 goals, to advocate, educate, and collaborate, is by utilizing the government affairs opportunities. The Government Affairs Council stays abreast of what is happening in the state, regional, and local level that might be of interest or of importance to the business community. And it's business community in general, not necessarily a narrow industry focus, but business in general. Two very important issues that have gone through the Government Affairs Council recommendation process is Measure 26238, which the Chamber opposes, and Measure 26239, which the Chamber supports. Thus, the red light, green light on your desk. We've got red light, don't do it, green light, better do it kind of concept. So we're going to talk about those today. I'm going to take this time to, before I introduce the guests for the Public Safety 239, I'm going to take a brief moment to share the details on the other measure that the Chamber Board is suggesting opposing, and that's Measure 238. It's a capital gains tax to fund free attorneys for renters. So a little brief history. This is a ballot initiative, which means everyday people went out and got signatures to get it on the ballot. And this tax, the ballot title said briefly, the new tax would be on capital gains that would fund free attorneys for Multnomah County residents facing evictions. But the devil is in the details or lack thereof in this particular case. One small point. This measure has no eligibility threshold. In other words, it's not for low-income people. It's for everybody. Any level tenant can apply. Is that me making this pop? Yes? Okay. Do I need to stand back? Okay. Another brief message this measure has. It does not stop at just evictions. Any landlord-tenant issue qualifies for a free attorney. Any. Not just evictions. This measure taxes all residents in Multnomah County, whether they're low income, middle income, or high income wage earners. And this measure is required to be adjusted, not reviewed, adjusted. My husband and I were taking a walk this weekend. I was telling him about this measure, and I said, and it's required to be adjusted. And he said, no, you mean reviewed. It should be reviewed. I said, no, that's not what the language in this measure says. It says adjusted, required to be adjusted. No, then you mean review. Drake, hello, you want to eat dinner tonight? Believe me, it says adjusted. So when was the last time that you saw a tax that's managed by a government go down? So the tax will start at one level, and there's no ceiling, there's no threshold over how high this tax is mandated to be adjusted. So here's just one true picture of what this measure will do. By the way, the tax is 0.75. 0.75 sounds like a little amount, but think about it going up every year, never stopping. But anyway, here's one small, true example of what this measure could do. If you're a senior, and I admit to being one, that is required by a branch of government to take a certain percentage of your retirement fund out every year, that's a taxable event. So one says, I have to take it, and now it's a taxable event, is a capital gain, and so that tax would be on there. So who then receives the funds? Here's another true scenario. A high wage earner driving a Mercedes, living in a rental while his $2 million new home that he just purchased is being remodeled, and he's arguing with his landlord over the color of paint in his living room, he qualifies to receive a free attorney to fight the landlord. Sound outrageous? Am I just making this up? This is what this ballot measure will allow, because there's no parameters whatsoever in this. There's no wage, there's no issue. It's not just eviction, it's not for low income, it's for everybody, for anything, and it's a free attorney funded by my senior taxes. So we have taxable events all the time, we just don't know it. If any of you sold a used car and you made a lot of money on it, technically you should put that on your taxes because it's a capital gain. I don't know if you do, I'm not going to tattle if you don't, but that is a capital gain. And if you're a low-income wage earner that had the blessing of selling a used car and getting that extra money, that would be taxed as well. If you were to put it if you would, as you're supposed to do, put it on your taxes. And if you are a family-owned business, your family-owned business, we file on our personal taxes. So big corporations don't have to pay this. But you, as a family business owner, would have to pay this tax because of how you have to file your taxes. So the measure has no thresholds, no means test, no specifics, no way to stop the tax from increasing every year. And on top of everything else, there are already 2 very successful programs in place for rental assistance. Portland and Multnomah County both have programs in place that are based on specific criteria. What we all want. We want to help people that have low income wages that are facing an eviction. Those programs are already in place and they've been funded already. In the case of the Multnomah County, the high wage earners over a certain dollar amount are funding that with their tax dollars. And it goes into a pot specifically for evictions to help low wage earners. And those programs are underused. In other words, there's plenty of room for more people to come and use those already existing, already funded programs. So this new tax is not needed and is being opposed by some elected officials that might surprise you. For some of you in the audience, you have certain political bents and you may think, okay, well, I'm on this side all the time or I'm on this side all the time. But let me share with you some of the folks that are opposing this. Every single Multnomah County commissioner is opposing this, every single one. The Portland Mayor, Ted Wheeler, is opposing it. Congressman Earl Blumenauer is opposing this tax. Metro Chair Lynn Peterson, Multnomah County Chair Jessica Vega Peterson is opposing this. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. When Chair Peterson put her preschool for all measure out there, the folks that brought this capital gains tax help her get that passed. So she's on opposite sides of this particular issue with those folks that she was side by side on a different issue. So she is adamantly opposed to this as well. So our theme today is red light, green light. Clearly, this is a red light. No on this capital gains tax. Measure 26-238. The green light is measure 26-239. So on your ballot, it's going to be 26-238. That's a red light. For those of you that still follow laws when you drive, that's the top light, on there. And then the green light is what we're going to talk about next. I'm not going to do the talking about that. You've heard enough from me, our guests that are going to do that. So we have 2 very informative speakers with us today, Mayor Stovall and Cathy Keathley. The mayor will speak first for about 15 minutes. I've given him 15 minutes, expecting it to go 20 or 25, but I'm saying 15 minutes. And then Cathy, who's the spokesperson for Gresham United for Safety. And after they are done, then we're going to open it up for questions. Any questions are free game from you. We had a question online about compression, and so somebody will ask that question for you about compression, Mayor. So, and then after that, if you want to ask me a particular question about the red light one, I'd be happy to do that. But don't tell anybody that you asked Lynn about red light, because that's old time red light stuff is not good. So anyway, so with that, I know I'm going way off on this one, aren't I? So with that, I'd like to introduce our honorable mayor of Gresham, Travis Stovall.
I was actually looking forward to using that Apple box so that I can peer down on everybody. Good afternoon. That was supposed to be a response. Maybe I should look up this time. Good afternoon. All right, good to see you. Wow, a lot of friendly. Uh-oh, I broke it, Keith. I absolutely broke it. Lots of friendly faces out here. It's always good to see my good friend Dan Corcoran from McDonald Weddell. If you guys don't know Dan, he is an absolute treat to know and learn from. And yeah, good person.
He has an awesome wife, too.
Yeah, good people. So good afternoon. I just want to first thank everybody for coming out. I also want to thank your leadership. As I look at and hear about board here at the Gresham Area Chamber of Commerce, I think it's critical that we have great leadership, leading our business organizations. I was at once I was the both treasurer, and then the next year I was the president of the chamber board. So I know exactly what it takes. It takes a lot of dedication, time, and energy to ensure as community we are moving forward in the right ways. So I just want to give a huge thanks for the leadership that exists in this room of the chamber and beyond. We've got both, Mount Hood Community College, Dr. Scari and Dr. James Hugh, who heads up Gresham Barlow. So education is critical to our community. So we've got a bunch of leaders here. We've already referenced those folks. So I'll stop there and get down to business because I want to make sure I end up in about 15 minutes. So Gresham Safety Levy, I've been working on safety levies here in the great city of Gresham for almost a decade and a half. And we've seen many challenges that have arisen from our lack of investment. Many challenges, and I think it's more pronounced today than it has ever been. So we're at a critical, pivotal moment in Gresham's history. We no longer can shunt our responsibility and not make the investments that we need to make. And so I'm going to hit some highlights of the safety levy, why the safety levy, and what we're talking about here, and the challenges that we're now facing, and the critical point at which we are. So, one of the questions I sometimes get is, why did you defund the police? And one time I was sitting at a restaurant shortly after I was elected, having dinner with a friend, and a couple came up to me and said, "Are you the mayor of Gresham?" And I looked at him confidently and said, "Absolutely not." And I confessed, I said, "Yes, I am." And they said, "Well, why did you defund the police?" And I said, "Actually, our police actually have adequate funding, more funding than we've ever had, but nearly not enough to move us forward as a city." And at that point, they commenced to pulling up 2 chairs and sitting there and grilling me for the next 30 minutes. I kid you not, that actually happened. And so where are we at today? Many of you know that we no longer are able to staff our specialty teams, our neighborhood enforcement teams, which have been critical components, to our public safety. Not just the concept of the reaction or the enforcement, but much of our public safety happens in the proactive approach that we have. The community policing, all of those things. And our neighborhood enforcement team has been a critical component to our ability to be on the front end of some of the things that happen. So we've lost our specialty teams. Our response times have increased. We're becoming more reliant on the city of Portland and some of their resources, and Multnomah County and some of their resources, both in police and in fire. Our homeless services are currently only available during business hours. Clearly, our homeless individuals, those who are struggling, don't need any assistance but between 9 to 5. So those are some of the foundational things that we're facing. We have an $8 million budget shortfall. Now, sometimes, folks say, well, that's because we're top heavy. And I could tell you that I had a conversation recently. I said, you know what? We could, which I don't advocate, wipe out our entire parks department. We can wipe out our entire administrative department, which is our city manager's office. We could wipe out the entire community development department and many of our economic development folks. And we're still only about $6 million into the budget shortfall, because 91% of our general fund is made up of police and fire. And that's not because we are over-resourcing police and fire. That's because our general fund is woefully smaller than any of our sister cities and like-sized cities. And many of you have heard me talk about the city of Hillsborough. I'm not sitting here because I'm a fan of Hillsborough, but I am a fan of their general fund. Their general fund sits at roughly $123 million. Now, I'm going to ask you all, what do you think our general fund sits at? For those of you who don't come to the council meetings regularly, you don't get to answer this one. Anybody want to guess at what the 4th largest city in the state, that is Gresham, what our general fund is compared to Hillsborough's, which is 123 million right here.
50 million?
Wow, that would be extremely difficult. We're at 90 million. 90 million. Compared to 123. Now, we're the fourth largest city in the state. We're 8,000 people larger than the city of Hillsborough. The city of Beaverton, which is also a comparable city at 97,000, their general fund's about 125 to 130 million also. We are close to $40 million less than our sister cities. To get to a city that has a similar general fund as us, we have to go all the way down to the city of Medford, which has 35,000 less people than we do here in our great city. 35,000 less, and that's when we get to a city that has a very similar budget. We don't even have to go out of our side of the metro area to talk about a city that has a representation of a general fund that is substantially higher than ours per capita. We go to the city of Troutdale. The city of Troutdale has about 20,000 people. Their general fund is $25 million. If we matched our general fund just to theirs, our general fund would be about 125 million, which would be more representative of, again, our sister cities. So that's the challenge we face. And this challenge has been in place since 1998, since Measure 5 and Measure 50 was introduced. Ever since then, the revenue per capita has declined substantially. We haven't passed a levy since 1992. We haven't passed a general obligation bond, a GO bond, over that same time, except for the great school district of Gresham Barlow. We have other great school districts here, and actually every single one of them passed bonds in the last, 5 to 7 years. So we do have some GO bonds that have passed for our school districts, but we have had none that have passed in the city of Gresham. So what is this? What is the safety levy? It gives us the opportunity to now make the investments in our city that truly allows us to fund our city in the right way. We're going to establish an oversight committee, which it's going to include our finance committee and our city council. So it's going to be representative of our budget committee, so that we have both the council and our finance committee, which are made up of community members working together to ensure we put out an annual report to say exactly where the funds are going. When you run a levy and you put things in the levy, those percentages have to roll out exactly how it's presented in the levy. When we did our initial work to find out whether or not we had support, 59% of Greshamites said that they would support $1.50 per thousand in reference to moving forward with our public safety efforts. What are we looking to do? Stabilize services through adequate staffing and funding, and making sure that we've got the ability to avoid service reductions. As I already referenced, it could take out our entire parks department, a number of other folks, and we would still not get to the point of our deficit because, again, we're challenged by our financial structure and where we are today. This is a 5-year levy, so it has to be renewed every 5 years. Our sister city, Hillsborough, has renewed their public safety levy, which I believe is about $1.62 or a little bit higher. They've done it every 5 years since 1997. This would be an average of $28.50 per month. That's average, so there certainly some going to be higher, some are going to be lower, but the average is $28.50. This is based on assessed value, which we're not going to get into specifically. But 62.5% of this will go to our police department. 62.5% of the levy goes to the police department. We'll preserve 34 existing police positions in the first year, adds 26 new positions, and maintains 13 temporary positions over a 5-year levy. And as I've already referenced, we've got Safe Gresham. We've got a Safe Gresham initiative that's really about collaboration, prevention, and intervention. I always add to that and say we also want to consider prevention, intervention, and enforcement. When I think specifically about law enforcement, prevention, intervention, and enforcement. Prevention, in this case, an ounce is worth a ton of cure. Our ability to be proactive in our community, connecting with folks, ensuring that we are out there in our community working with folks that potentially could have challenges is way more beneficial than working just on the enforcement side. And that's been proven. Last year we stood up our youth services division, which has a youth services or a youth violence prevention program, which has been very effective, working shoulder to shoulder with our police department and getting tremendous results over the last roughly about 12 months. And so, again, we're not looking to do a lot of different things that don't have its foundation in proven results. We're looking to expand the things that we're doing that actually have proven results. 35% of the levy will go for our fire, preserving 21 existing firefighter positions, adding 16 new positions, 4 temporary positions over the 5 years of the levy. Homeless services, we'll be looking at no more than 2.5%, but adding 1 potential homeless services specialist and maintaining a temporary position. All of this is to ensure that we can respond to the challenges that we're seeing in our community. Lastly, we'll be looking at adding to our crisis response. Much of what we see in our community from a perspective of the things that are unsavory is happening at various different levels. And the reason I say that is because it's not always that we have to respond with a sworn officer, someone that goes in with the gun on the hip and the taser on the other hip and all of that. There are absolutely situations where they are warranted and we want them there. But there are also situations where we could actually have a mental health worker who is responding to some of those situations, connecting those individuals to additional resources. We've had great success. And if you are wondering how much we're doing with that, we have a mental health unit already that's part of our police department. They'll be presenting this evening at our 6 o'clock business meeting. So if you want to come out and listen to the great work they're doing, please don't hesitate to join us this evening talking about the great results that they're getting. But we would be looking at expanding that program because crisis response and utilizing the right resource in the right situation is critical to ensure. It's critical to ensure that we are investing your dollars in ways that gets the best results. And so that's why we're looking at expanding our crisis response team, adding 2 additional positions. We get to keep Tag. If you haven't met Tag, Tag's our comfort dog, and he's always a joy to see. And really, it's about making sure that we're saving our safety jobs. If we're looking at the sad possibility of our levy not passing, we're seeing substantial additional cuts. As I've already referenced, 91% of our general fund budget, once you remove the transfers, which aren't really additions to our budget, 91% of our general fund goes to our police and fire. And there's no way that we can meet the needs of our entire community if the levy doesn't pass with the dollars and cents that we currently have. It's just not possible. So, we will look to find ways to ensure that we cut as little as possible, but there will be substantial cuts, because it's challenging, the situation that we're left in. And so we'll have to eliminate services and look to do things that do not benefit our community. And as we look across the region, one of the biggest challenges we face is that on a national scale, and we had Barry Dunn, who's a national public safety consultancy agency, come in and tell us what we've heard a few times before this. You're woefully under-resourced in your police department. Then we had another agency who came in and did the same work on our fire department. They said, you're woefully under-resourced. So we have 2 national firms coming and telling us that we're woefully under-resourced. Just for a quick metric, nationally, when you go to our police per thousand, which is not always the best adequate way of addressing whether or not we've got the resource, but if you're looking at police per thousand nationally, it's 2.2. Here in Gresham, we are less than 1. Less than one police per thousand. We have 115,000 people, and we're currently less than 1. Now, when we're fully staffed at about 127 to 129, then we go just above 1. Right now, we sit less than 100 police officers on the street. And that's challenging, especially when some of our neighbors to the west of us have police officers per 1,000 that are closer to that too. And so if you're a criminal looking to do bad things, you're most likely going to go to the place of least resistance. So I want to thank everybody for coming out this afternoon. Just wanted to absolutely give you the highlights of what we're looking at from a perspective of why we're asking for this. And I'll finish up by just saying that ultimately we've seen we've seen a lot of substantial increases in property crimes. We've seen a lot of substantial increases in areas that we don't want to see go up. Violent crime in 2022 was some of the highest homicides we've ever seen. Since then, those numbers have come down on the homicide, but that's our priority 1. That's our highest priority, crimes against people. We've been very effective in bringing those numbers down, but we've seen other areas rise. sadly enough. And so to have that balance, we've got to have the resources to effectively make sure that we're keeping our community safe, and it's the foundation of economic development. Without that, we're going to struggle to ensure that we are keeping businesses here and encouraging others to come in. So with that, I want to thank you, and I do believe I'm right at 15 minutes.
He's right on a whole bunch of issues, but especially the time one. So that was a good thing. We didn't know it's not. The mayor is right. And Cathy Keathley is going to come up in just a second, but the mayor is right that public safety is really important. I don't know if you guys read the news yesterday, but REI is leaving downtown Portland, the Pearl District. Not because they're not making money, but it's because the money that they should have been made is being taken out the door either through theft or burglary. It's the crime issue that is moving REI away. And they're a big business that maybe can get other corporate dollars to them, but our small businesses don't have that same asset. So Cathy Keathley, Gresham United for Safety, come on up. And you have 14 minutes and 58 seconds. So there you go.
Thank you so much for coming out today to learn about this issue, and I'm especially appreciative of being able to represent Gus. Gresham United for Safety really represents community members and business owners just like you. We were so concerned about our personal safety and the effects of the rising crime on all of us, and especially the city, that we really just wanted to do something about it. So Gus was formed as a grassroots effort to be a champion for safety for Gresham. Our efforts over the last year was to learn everything we could about funding and staffing issues. We really dedicated a lot of time to go to the council meetings and read the Barry Dunn report, as the mayor mentioned, cover to cover. All of that work and effort allowed us to participate in moving the dial so the council could be more narrowly focused on where the tax dollars were going through this levy. This is a business organization, so from a business perspective, passing this levy obviously is critical to your business. Many of you have experienced impacts to your businesses, as many more from a personal experience, like stolen cars, certainly, even home invasions, which we personally had an experience with. And even just watching the people walk out of stores impacts us individually. It's just a personal affront to what we believe our community is about. A friend of mine recently called and said he had to literally close one of his stores because he couldn't keep up with the vandalism and the theft. And frankly, it was from a financial and an emotional standpoint. So Gus has been out talking and listening to the community. There are 4 consistent messages we're hearing, and whether you're a business owner or a community member, you've either heard these questions or have had them yourself. So I just want to address a few of them with you. Number 1, we can't afford more taxes. We fully acknowledge this will increase taxes, and we know it will have an impact on you personally. We believe the level of crime is having just as much of an impact. When you think about the increase and impact to your businesses, I would like to suggest that the levy will ultimately lower your costs. Many businesses are having to pay for private security. We've all seen an increase in car insurance and homeowners insurance. And I have to say, I was at the mayor's town hall last night, and a woman said exactly that. I've opened my car insurance, and it went up so much. And that's going to continue if we don't get a handle on the crime. So even the costs of goods are going up beyond inflation to account for the tens of thousands of dollars in theft. That's increasing our costs far more than the levy will. It actually goes far beyond the financial impact. One example is an issue that happened, I was just made aware of the other day, about Ride Connection recently. Ride Connection provides transportation options to individuals in need, from older adults to people with disabilities, to low-income individuals and underserved communities. They provide essential transportation services to those who need it. Ride Connection stores its vehicles in a county lot. Recently, they had vandalism on their vans 4 nights in a row in 1 week. One of the new things is drilling holes in people's gas tanks, which may just seem like simple acts of vandalism. Do you know what it means to Ride Connection? They can't provide their services. And when I say essential a moment ago, that could mean dialysis. It could mean a ride to surgery, or anything else that is essential for that person who needed a ride. This is far more beyond the financial impact. Number 2, It's a lack of trust. I don't want to give any more money to the city. They should live within their means. Well, we know a lot of our voters do not have the opportunity to hear the mayor, or if they do, they don't listen, to understand the significant impact of taxes on Gresham. If they did, they might not say that, but that is what we're dealing with. So in response to that, some just don't trust the government in general, government, whether it's city or not, to spend the money as it was intended or through the right priorities. We understand, which is why we dealt with that concern by prioritizing and making sure this levy prioritized public safety. Gus wanted to make sure that the levy was asking only for what we need right now. We need a lot more, as the mayor suggested, but we wanted to make this be the essential services that we need. Gus also wanted an accountability piece, as did the city. There will be an oversight committee that directs the funding and will provide an annual report. Levies must be approved every 5 years by the voters. You get to decide how the city's doing and whether or not you want to continue it in 5 years. It's not an ongoing process. The oversight committee will be the watchdog group. Gus believes it needs to have only one task, which is oversight of this committee. It should be citizen-led and council-directed, in our view. Number 3, why do we need it and what will the money pay for? Gresham needs more officers. As the mayor just suggested, we have 129 budgeted. I've always used the number of 113, but last night it is less than 100. The levy is dedicated specifically to fund public safety. It will put more officers on the streets. It will add firefighters, which will make sure the call response times stay at an acceptable level. And it will also bring back our specialty teams again, as the mayor mentioned. Some of those teams include the NET team, neighborhood enforcement team, traffic unit, and transit team. The traffic unit, when you see the speeding that makes you all crazy, and we're impacted by the accidents. It's the absolute uncontrolled traffic that we have and the speeding, and that's one of the important teams. Those teams are the ones that are dedicated specifically to the crimes that affect us the most. And it will make the biggest impact on the crimes that we see. Number 4, why would I fund this levy when the Multnomah County DA is just going to let those arrested go? And we know, and we all agree, that we want more officers prosecuted and sentenced. And that will be the next thing that we fix, but we can't wait for that to be resolved before we add officers on the streets. It's the officers that respond to our calls, not the DA. Letting the criminals know we have officers out in force and more of them will be a deterrent. And this levy will send the message to the men and women of Gresham Police that their community supports them and gives them a reason to stay so that we can keep more of our experienced officers. There was a community member again last night at the mayor's town hall, and I want to share it because it provided a sense of hope to me, I guess. The gentleman said he had moved here in 1954, and through all of our ups and downs and growth and problems, especially in the last 2 years, what he said was, Gresham has heart. Even through the last 2 or 3 years. I believe that. I see that. I think that's what really brought Gus together as this grassroots effort. Gresham has heart. And we have got to pass this levy so that we can make sure that we maintain that. I do want to leave you with this one thought. Gresham United for Safety is made up of individual and business owners in our community, just like you. We are an objective, unified group that had oversight on this process. You can believe and have faith that we did everything to successfully accomplish our mission of improving safety for Gresham, and we believe passing this levy is critical to accomplishing that. If you'd like to help us, because our grassroots effort includes all of you, we will be out as you leave to collect your names for taking a sign in your yard sign, or if you want to walk with us as we go to the neighbors. We think that the success of this is going to be those one-on-one conversations, because I know the mayor and the city is giving out all of this information, and yet I continue to hear from citizens that say, why don't they just talk to us? Oh my gosh, it's going to take us personally interacting with our family and friends and neighbors, knowing these questions and having a response to them that supports them, and having them look instead of that it's a tax and it is going to increase our public safety. It's going to solve the crime problem. That's more to the point. So thank you so much, and look forward to your questions.
So, Cathy, don't go away because we're going to ask for questions, and the mayor can join you up there. You can move the apple cart or apple crate further away. So I thought it was important today to have somebody from the government talk and somebody from those that elect people talk so that you could see that there's a collaboration between the two and that we're both working on behalf of all of us to get something done in the city. So we're going to open it for questions for the green light issue or the red light issue. So any questions first? Yeah, Aaron, here we go. Aaron, I think, has the compression question.
So that'd be great for Cathy.
All right. We had a chamber member who couldn't be here today but had a question. We have property tax limits under Oregon state law. Most municipalities are at that limit, which means that for new taxes to be enacted, existing special tax measures must be reduced or compressed. In the language of taxation, is Gresham already at this limit? And if so, what other special existing taxes will be compressed to make way for this new levy, and by what amount?
Next question.
Do.
Anybody? Okay. So ultimately, Gresham is not quite in compression yet. So the $1.50 that we're talking about will put us into some compression, and it'll put us in compression. So if it weren't for the caps, we would raise about $15 million from this levy because of compression. Which, if you don't understand compression, I'm not going to give a deeper dive into this, but I'll say that for general government services, you can tax up to $10 per thousand. So $10 per thousand of tax assessed value is what is available to general services. Schools and education can tax an additional $5, so they have a $5 cap. I believe our education is at their cap, just below it. So this $1.50 will actually put us into compression by $2 million of the $15 million. So we're only going to receive $13 million, which we could receive up to $15 million if it weren't for compression. So what happens is, as we add this $1.50 to what we currently have, it's going to compress everything down. Levies get compressed first, and then permanent rates get compressed after that. So this levy will be compressed first and foremost before our permanent rates will get compressed, and those permanent rates are across the board. So permanent rates for Multnomah County, permanent rates for Metro, permanent rates for any special districts that exist within our $10 cap situation. So this is going to put us into compression by about that $2 million, but for the most part, just the levy will be compressed. The other items will generally stay roughly about the same.
Okay, another question. No, Dennis, you need to ask through this so that you're recorded forever, perpetuity.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the difference. If we're so far below funding our police than other communities, and yet we're still close to this compression cap, how does that work?
Cathy? So part of it's going to be based on the other entities that exist within our county and in our metro area. So here we have metro, and then we also have our county. When I reference both Hillsborough and Beaverton, they exist in Clackamas County and Washington County. So they have a different tax structure at the county level. Here in Multnomah, we actually pay roughly just over $5 per thousand to Multnomah County. We only pay $3.61 per thousand to the city of Gresham. And I can guarantee you get more direct services from the city than you get from the county. And so there's a bit of a challenge there. So when you go to Washington County takes less on a per thousand basis of that tax base than what Multnomah County gets and receives from our tax base. So that's part of the challenge that we exist here. Although Hillsborough, they have a public safety levy that they've had in place for quite some time, and then they also have a transportation fee that goes on their utility bill of $10 per month. So that's that helps them grow their budget to where they are. and where they exist in, out in Hillsborough. But I referenced Troutdale. So Troutdale actually has a permanent rate it's the highest among the 4 cities in East County. That's why their number is so significantly higher than what ours is on a per capita basis.
Okay. Who has a question there?
How does the safety levy positively, I hope, impact 911 response?
So as you know, we actually use what's called BOEC. So it's the Bureau of Emergency Communications that's run by the city of Portland. Because of economies of scale, we buy a portion of that service, because if we had to set it up, it would be substantially more expensive. So part of our response, our 911 response, is due to some of BOEC's challenges, which primarily sits on some of the same resource constraints that everybody's existing in today. They just can't get enough people, get them trained fast enough and soon enough to handle the call volume that we're experiencing today. So that's part of it. This levy specifically on our side, what we're responsible for, is going to enhance our response times, because ultimately, for those of you who were there last evening, Chief Travis Goldberg, together with a Travi, Chief Goldberg, actually, someone asked the question, well, how many police is it going to put on the streets? And he says, it's going to put 11 over the next 3 years. And he says, but it's not just about sworn police officers. He goes, we have to provide the best level of service at every level. And so now we'll have our community safety specialists, which we don't have today. It's used across the country. They're going to be utilized to help improve our response times. A gentleman asked, well, is somebody going to show up in less than 45 minutes? It all depends. We've got priority 1 through, I believe, priority 4 or 5 calls. Priority 1 is crimes against a person, active, that's going on right now. Those are the ones that are the most important that we need to respond to. Priority 4 or 5 may be a property against, a crime against property. That's already occurred. So, last summer my motorcycle ignition got drilled at my house. Nobody needed to show up in 45 minutes. As a matter of fact, nobody needed to show up at all. All I needed to do was, make a police report. Well, most likely, we're not going to have the resources right now to send somebody out. But if we have the community safety specialist, that person could come out, do the deeper investigation. The reason that can enhance and improve response times is because an officer historically would have had to come out to take that report. Now that officer can be ready for priority 1, priority 2 calls, while this individual is working on a priority 5 response that's post whatever occurred, doing a deeper investigation, and maybe making connections with other incidences that have happened within the neighborhood, so that we can actually build the case to take to the DA so that we can get a conviction. So those are the ways that we actually have the opportunity to increase our response times. On the police side, on the fire side, we would be adding roughly about 12 firefighters. That's going to absolutely enhance and increase our ability to reduce our response times, which would get us closer to the national norms. But I will tell you right now, you're one of the first to hear it. The next conversation we have to have is our infrastructure. And one of the most challenging areas of our infrastructure is our fire stations. Our fire stations, many of them were built decades and decades ago, and they're woefully under-prepared for where we are today and where we're going in the future. That's a GO bond conversation that we'll be bringing to our community, have these conversations in the future. And that's critical. The reason I bring that up is because ultimately, to get our response times down in fire, it's not just adding to the current workforce that's at our fire stations, it's actually adding an additional fire station. And that's going to take time and money to be able to put that into place. But it's really, how do we make sure that we're investing in our community? And when you think about it, I know this is a long answer to a short question. When you think about it, we've been woefully behind our counterparts for the last 2 decades. And so we've got a structural deficit here that is not an actual balance sheet debt, but we've got a debt. And that debt now needs to be paid. I'm looking at my friend Jordan over here, finance person over at Gresham Barlow. He understands that when you have a structural debt that you haven't invested in that infrastructure for decades, it's crumbling. And it's going to take a lot to lift it to where it needs to be. But as community, I believe we can band together and make this happen in the most positive ways.
So another thought process is it doesn't take us very long for our habits to change. And our habits have changed because a lot of us thought, okay, well, we're understaffed at the police, so we won't call the police because there's nobody that can answer. So we'll call 911 instead. So there's a shift of behavior of who can answer a question. So there's been an increase in 911 calls because of that mentality. We don't have enough police, so let's go the 911 route. So Michael, and then could you raise your hands again? Okay, so there we go.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Mayor Stovall and Cathy for being here today. Just a point of clarification before I ask my question. The Overwatch Committee is a very important critical point of this levy. I heard the mayor say that the Overwatch Committee is the Finance Committee and the Council. And then I heard Cathy say it would be community members and council. So is there a discrepancy of those two? Because
The Finance Committee is community.
I understand that. And haven't they been responsible for overseeing the budget to this point, to where we are today? The Finance Committee and the Council are the two that have been responsible for managing our finances today. I'm understanding that outside of those two bodies, there could be other community members to be involved in this levy. Is that correct?
Let me clarify.
There's clarification. Just a clarification. I don't need an answer today.
My clarification is that I think the mayor did say it was the Finance Council Committee and the Council. Gus would encourage it to be singularly focused so that the Oversight Committee isn't, deflected with the current budget, and they would have to compromise on current budget versus levy. We would suggest, and I don't think it's been decided yet. I think the council will still decide that, but our input is it should be singularly focused on the levy, citizen-led and community, whatever my words were, but citizens and council.
Okay, great.
Singular onto, that's just our suggestion.
Right.
So, well, let me respond to that, because ultimately, I mean, this is a broader discussion and conversation that I look forward to and have the community inside, because ultimately the power sits to ensure that we are with the budget committee. I mean, the actual power given by the state, regardless of what we set up as a council, sits with that budget committee. The budget committee, which is the finance committee, which is made up of all community members, and the council sitting together. And so to hold a body responsible, I mean, the budget is the document that actually foretells where the dollars are going to be spent. And so if there's anything to hold a group accountable, it's that committee, because the budget is the actual legal document that says how dollars can be spent. So I'll be interested in talking how we, potentially if we add or short that, maybe, because I would ultimately say that where we are today from a finance perspective has nothing to do with the budget committee. The budget committee over the years have been a phenomenal institution in that how do you ensure that you could provide needed services with the least amount of dollars? That's essentially what our budget committee has done successfully under the leadership of the finance committee and Shane Bemis and the rest of our council over those years. They've been very austere about how the dollars have been spent. So it's been a very successful opportunity there to make sure that we are very focused on those dollars. And I mean, where we are today, it's just the factor of Measure 5 and Measures 50 that have completely shrunk our ability to bring in the revenue we need to provide a full service city.
Okay, we've got a question from Wells Fargo.
Yay. Love asking questions. So I have a question. So I'm currently a renter, but I have a question as a renter. So a lot of our growth over the last decade even in our communities has been from the development of apartment complexes. And we haven't had a lot of development of actual homes. One that I would actually love to be able to buy, but I can't because we have constant growth of apartments, which is the contributing factor for the need of this levy, because that's what's contributing to the population of our community. Yet all I'm hearing is homeowners are the ones paying for the levy. Is there not a way for the community as a whole to pay for the levy?
So, well, the short answer to that is yes. I mean, to say that multifamily doesn't pay at all is not accurate, because multifamily Apartment owners still pay a property tax, and they will see an increase unless they have a tax abatement, which some of our newer facilities do have tax abatements. And so they won't pay commensurate with what other facilities will pay. And so there's some equity conversations we can have there. Some of our larger businesses will also not pay the full ride because they also have tax abatements through our enterprise zones. But it is tremendously beneficial to have those businesses in our community providing family wage jobs. So we have it in both the residential and the commercial side. Now, if we didn't provide the high density on the residential side, then we couldn't provide the level of workers. I mean, I know folks sitting in this room that if they could have one thing today, it's not so much the deal flow, but it's actually the people who could work and generate the revenue with those organizations. And if you talk to, I won't say their name, but there's a large multifamily housing company that lives in Gresham, that's headquartered in Gresham, and they'll tell you, they hear from businesses all the time, without workforce housing, those businesses can't thrive. And so we can do the economic development, build out the enterprise zones, but we have to put together the workforce housing to be able to supply that. I know Chad and Karen right here. I know they could use as many people as they could get, quality people today, to increase and enhance their revenue. So that's part of the challenge. Now, again, multifamily housing units, they also pay, if they don't have a tax abatement, which many of the older units do not, they pay a higher property tax. The other way that we also work with this is the fee structure. Property taxes get levied on property, the specific property. The fee structure actually gets leveled on each door that receives a utility bill. So it's a per door tax rather than just a property tax. So the fee is a better mechanism to ensure that most properties and people are actually contributing to the situation that we're faced with. And so that's why you see in many communities matching a property tax with a fee structure to adequately fund, especially the services that aren't solely dependent on just a property, but also is going to sometimes be an increase because you have a high concentration of people and higher density that could create additional challenges for our resources. And so that's why the fee structure is also utilized to ensure that we could cause at least some of that balance to be in place.
Okay, we've got time for four more questions, but only one more answer. I was teasing about that.
What?
No, I'm just teasing. You go back to whatever you were doing, Mayor. So another question from anyone?
How can we help?
How can we help? Is that the question? How can we help? Cathy and Mayor, maybe both of you can address that.
Thank you, Michael. That is a really important question because state law disallows city or government agencies from advocating for or against a measure once it gets to the ballot. So the city, the mayor, can't. The elected officials can individually, but the city staff can't. So the mayor can talk about their coalition that they've created to do just that. That's what GUS is doing, Gresham United for Safety. We are doing lawn signs. We're going to be canvassing. We have the voters pamphlet. Encourage people to look at all of those. We submitted a number of those. We'll do letters to the editor. And as I said, I think the biggest impact we can have is an individual conversation so that people understand it isn't just a tax. It is solving the safety, or at least moving towards solving the rising crime and public safety issues. So that's how you can help. And again, sign up with us or the coalition that the mayor will share with you.
Yeah, so ultimately what Cathy said was spot on. I loved her final comment when she was giving her comments earlier, where she said, basically, we have to talk to and discuss this one-to-one with our neighbors and our colleagues. That's really what it's going to be, because I'm sometimes a bit fluxumed by, we actually put information out there in almost every single vector that we possibly can. And I still get, well, we never hear from you, which surprises me. So if you've got any thoughts or ideas and advice about reaching folks, I did get a letter from one of our community members, and he said he likes phone calls. So I told the council, you're going to have to make 115,000 phone calls. We all know that that's pretty challenging to do, but so we try to hit some level of economy of scale. But ultimately, I think this is really going to be something where we provide the critical talking points. I mean, because there are critical things that needs to be discussed, and many times as I talk to folks, there's a misunderstanding. One of the things I'm really fascinated about is the concept of distrust of government. Because ultimately, I mean, I think some national levels that's there, maybe some state levels and regional levels, but locally, you have every opportunity to see everything that's done at the city level. Now, the financial statements may be a little complex sometimes to look at and fully download, but it's all there. It all has to be by budget law. Everything has to be presented. We can't take an action without it all being in the public sector. And Sue O'Halloran is here, and I just want to give her a huge thanks. Sue has been a stalwart on our finance committee for many, many years. I know she's only like 12, but I mean, she started super young. So I just want to thank Sue for her guidance and leadership for so many years dedicated to our finance committee and helping us make sure that the actions we took were right along with what we needed to take because of our limited financial resources. So again, I mean, really what we have to do is have friends talking to friends, colleagues talking to colleagues. I'm willing to come out to a community group, a house party, whatever is needed to provide the information, because again, like you've heard me say numerous times, we've been woefully behind the curve on investing in our city. And as its mayor, I don't want to see us continue to fall further and further behind in our ability to be one of the greatest cities in the state of Oregon, if not the entire country.
John?
You don't follow directions, Farrah. You heard that was the last one.
I'll get the last one.
You go ahead.
Okay, so I'll try to make it good. So I agree with you. I mean, Gresham's got a good problem, right? We're growing. That's great, right? It's a good problem to have. However, I'm hearing things like, we're close to maxed out on the compression issues for schools at $5, almost the $10, or will be at $10 for the city. We're woefully underfunded. Obviously, we haven't done things for decades. Our 90 million or whatever it is budget is less than per capita of some of our sister cities. It's no surprise we're in this situation, right? I mean, after all those things, right? So how could we fix that budget, right, to fix our infrastructure and our city government and our schools, right? What do we have to do from that aspect, from the macro perspective of increasing our budget, and then also looking at this safety measure, things like this, that we're kind of, this is a bit of a Band-Aid, right? We're going to continue to grow, so we have to continue to have this as a focus. And how are we going to do that when 239 passes and we move forward from there?
So this is actually a great question. That's a phenomenal question because it talks about the future and just what happens beyond this. What's our long-term plan, our strategic plan, which we've actually gone through. The city of Gresham, we develop our strategic plan, our 3-year financial roadmap. All of those things are put in place, and it lays out exactly the questions you're asking. Part of it is at some point we'll hit a limitation of how much we can grow. We'll hit the urban growth boundary, those types of things. We actually have added quite a bit of housing. If you go to southwest Gresham, we've got a lot of housing that's gone in there and a lot more that's going in. So that's been a substantial growth in single family units. And those types of things actually increase. That actually increases the overall revenue. So when you take, 10 to 20, 30 acres that used to be, vacant land, now you put in, a number of units, that actually increases and enhances our ability to enhance that revenue, but it also increases the stress that it causes on our infrastructure. So all that's there. This is more than just a Band-Aid. I mean, because ultimately this is a piece that should have and could have been in place a long time ago to assist us in moving in the right direction. And it still means that it doesn't mean that we aren't going to be an austere organization and city. I mean, what we're talking about is adding $13 million to our revenue with this levy. That puts us closer to about $105 million. Which, again, that doesn't put us anywhere close to our sister cities, but it gets us to something that's more representative of where we could and should be. And so there's other mechanisms like economic development that need to be a foundation of what we're talking about here, because the economic development truly is, I think, the lifeblood and the foundation of where we need to be as community and business development. Those are the things that we have to do both now and well into the future, but we can't do that without the right foundation when it comes to public safety.
Okay, go ahead. I just want to add one more thing about how we can help and how significant the lawn signs are. we want to try to change people's thought from just a tax increase to what this is solving for, what's the problem that it's going to provide. And when you put a lawn sign up, it makes people think, oh my gosh, they're supporting it. Maybe I should. It just arrests that no to new taxes. So I really encourage you, if you believe in this, put a lawn sign up, get neighbors to do so as well, and then talk to everybody. It's significant and it will help for sure.
Don't trip over that. So can we thank both of, wait, don't thank yet. Sue, what?
Yeah, just one last word. I love last word. I did want you to know that you have around 1,100 realtors out here in the East Metro Association who are fully supportive of this measure, and so they're putting their money on the line to help support the campaigns. So this is really a very broad coalition. We have people from the East County Rising, our west side of town. So the chamber's integral, but I want you to know that this really is, this is everybody saying this is so critical, and it relates to our economy in every aspect. Thank you.
So Marketing 101, when I took that class, and I got an A in it, by the way, you have to hear one issue 7 times before it starts to stick. So it doesn't surprise me that people say, gee, I didn't hear from you, because you're only on your 6th or maybe 6.5 time marketing. So it is a repeat all the time. And you are leaders in your community. And what Cathy was saying is so true. We need to get the message out so that when people drive by and they drive by it again, they drive by it 7 times, it might start to stick. And then you need to do red light, green light when you're for your own ballot, and your staff. And I'm sure the mayor and any of the councilors would be more than willing, Cathy, I'm sure would be more than willing to come to your work site and answer any questions or share that information, because it's very important that we get this passed in May. The ballots come out 26th of April. The deadline for the election date is 2 weeks later. So we need to get this passed and answer all the questions. The questions that Cathy came up with were the top questions. And the Oversight Committee comes up a lot with the business folks, because the Finance Committee is an extension of government, not necessarily a citizens committee. And so even that message is complicated. So thanks for coming. Thanks for being at the first Quality Inn event that we've had in years. So thank you. Thank you to Nicholas's for providing the food. I thought that was really good. The little bit that I had, a little hummus on a spoon, that was so good. I can't wait. So don't forget your rebroadcast schedule. If you want to share this information or hear it again, here it is, especially the green light, the red light part, since we didn't ask any questions later. Thank you, Aero Sanitary, Columbia, soon to be Umpqua, Portland General Electric, Persimmons, the Boeing Company for presenting sponsors, Gresham Barlow School District. Thank you, James. I'm not sure you were here when I gave the shout out to you. Thank you very much. MetroEast Community Media, thank you very much. Go forth and make a profit. See you next month.